Well, Jeff, obviously, in light of yesterday, we had the Nolan Arenado news of blocking the trade in Houston. And so I guess that's the big thing on everyone's mind right now. What could you tell us about the Arenado situation, how things are kind of evolving right now?
Yeah, I think that right now everyone is just sort of cooling their heels and figuring out what happens next. I kind of gotten the impression over the last few days that a deal was pretty imminent. When you hear Mo talk at the winter meetings as explicitly as he did about not only what they're trying to do, but also, he said that they expect to have all their business done in 7 to 10 days. He said he didn't think it would stretch into January, and I think that was a pretty good indication that they knew kind of where that market was headed. Now I don't know that they're so sure if they know where that market is headed. And I think part of that too was that I think there was some expectation that the Bregman market would be reaching its own conclusion in roughly the same amount of time, if not shorter, and that clearly hasn't happened either, right? So with those two things happening or not happening at the same time, it does create kind of a stalemate. I think that one thing that I would say to keep in mind is if a deal doesn't get done in the next 72 hours or so, I would expect it to not get done until after the new year, because I'll tell you who doesn't like to work over the holiday break is anybody, but especially baseball executives. And Bernie can speak to this. I think right about the 23rd, you can close your computer and not fire back up till January 2nd or so, and probably not miss very much. So my expectation would be that if it doesn't get done, say, the weekend with Nolan, that everybody takes a real step back and sort of reevaluates, and we see where we are after the first.
Jeff, by the way, you do a great job, man. You really do.
Thank you.
I became a subscriber to the Belleville-News Democrat just to read your coverage. Yeah,
we got one.
Outstanding. And I wanted to ask you this: is there any way that a trade could be made before Bregman decides where he's going to go, or do you think that's it's going to be a stalemate until then?
It's interesting, right? Because I think clearly we've seen they thought that they had a deal done before Bregman, but because it was Houston, that made sense. And I tend to agree with the folks who have said that that's probably an indication that Bregman and Houston are not getting back together. If they were ready to move on, then that tells me that they probably are not all that interested in that kind of commitment. So the short answer is, at this point, I would be surprised, just because if it's not Houston, that to me cuts the list down to places that are a little harder. Boston would be relatively easy, but Boston still has two things in the way, right? Boston, number one, in theory, would be on Bregman. And number two, would probably need to move Tristan Casas, or at least have an idea of where Casas ends up before they could make that deal, because you'd be looking at Devers moving to first and Arenado playing third in that situation, right? So, I think unless there is some sort of the hell with it, let's just go to the Angels kind of situation that arises, it probably does end up waiting on Bregman at this point.
Jeff, do you think there's any specific destinations that Arenado has in mind right now? And so, if it was the Red Sox that had come to an agreement with the Cardinals yesterday, that maybe he would have said yes, or is he purely wanting to see what all the options first before he makes a decision?
So I do think there are some places that would be a hard yes, but I think they're probably pretty limited, right? Like, for instance, I think the Dodgers would be a hard yes, but that doesn't seem likely to happen. I think the Padres would be a hard yes, but that also doesn't seem likely to happen without the Padres being able to ship out some money. And so outside of that, I do think it's going to be a matter of, gathering all of the offers, gathering kind of what everything looks like, and then deciding from there. Because, I'm not going to pretend to be the world's foremost, Nolan Arenado whisperer, right? But I don't think it would come as a surprise to anyone to say that maybe Nolan is not super excited about the possibility of playing in a high-pressure media market in the East. So I don't know that either the Red Sox or the Yankees would be at the top of his list otherwise. But if it's a situation where, for example, in Houston, where there was some chance that he would be the guy down there holding the bag in 2 years when they win 74 games, he's not going to want that situation either. I think Nolan is smart enough to see them dumping Tucker and going, well, wait a minute, this team is getting worse and not better, and not put himself in a situation to do that. And so if it comes down to, figuring out the best of bad options, then sure. But otherwise, I think the list of places that would be considered for Nolan, gold options, is probably a pretty short list, and I don't know that any of them are necessarily realistic at this point.
Jeff, I got a two-parter for you, I guess. A lot of media reports, as you know, I'm throwing you in there too, indicate that the Cardinals would be willing to send $10 to $15 million to a team that takes in Arenado. Number one, are you surprised? Let's just say it's $15 million. Are you surprised that they're willing to go that heavy? And number two, do you think that would be of interest to more teams? And could they possibly get more of a return for Arenado? Because I think we all agree it's kind of silly to expect any kind of great return for him. But if they throw the $15 million in, does it change that paradigm at all?
So what I would say is that we kind of have an interesting benchmark for what this looks like, not in terms of what they'll throw in, but in terms of cost, right? Because we saw the Yankees take on $47 million with Cody Bellinger, and that's 2 years. Now Bellinger is 4 years younger than Arenado, even. But when you look at that deal, the Yankees sopped up, I think it was 47 of what he had left on his deal, and threw back, a 4A pitcher who maybe helps the Cubs, maybe doesn't, as the return. But the money obviously is the primary part of that deal, right? And again, you're talking about a guy who at the plate you have some questions, but you trust him to play center. You trust him to play a premier defensive position. And so if you pay down for the Cardinals and you pay down 15 on Arenado, that gets you to pretty much the same number that the Yankees are going to pay for Bellinger. I think it's 49 versus 47, but it's pretty close. You're paying pretty much the same amount of cash. And so if that's where the scale is, then I think it at least gives us a pretty good judge of what the market is willing to spend, or what some teams at least are willing to spend on that sort of player. There obviously are differences between Nolan and Cody Bellinger, but I think it's fair to lump them into kind of a large bucket of like a guy where you trust the glove, you don't maybe necessarily trust the bat, but you see some upside with it, right? In terms of what the return looks like, the challenge for the Cardinals is going to be finding – the challenge is going to be finding a spot that is amenable to Nolan, obviously that's amenable to Nolan, that wants to take on the money and that has anything to send back, right? Again, when you look at what the Yankees got back, or what the Yankees sent for Cody Bellinger, Cody Poteet is a 30-year-old right-hander who is like fine, who's got pretty good numbers in the big leagues, but who knows how real that is and who knows really what that looks like. So, I think a couple of weeks ago, there was enough kind of traction on this, and there were enough teams that I'd heard it called that maybe you could have seen something more happening here. I think as this process has gone on, I think it's starting to become pretty clear that, number one, Nolan is maybe going to be more finicky about his destination than Joel Wolf might have intimated a week ago, and number two, that maybe that pool is not that big. And so to the earlier question, about can he go before Bregman, that's going to put another limiter, because if there are teams that are going to want to act before Bregman, the pitch would probably be, we'll do now, but we're only going to pay X. And so it's going to require the Cardinals to increase that pay down.
So, I might be backtracking just a bit here. And we talked about, your list of like gold standard places for Arenado. How do the Cardinals compare to that in terms of how much he wants to stay with them? I guess maybe a better way to phrase this question is, what's the relationship like between him and the team at this point? If the team was willing to trade him and Arenado declines that, is there a communication breakdown at this point? And I guess there are a lot of teams that make baseball sense that may not make Arenado trade approval sense. But do you think as we get closer to the season and Arenado realizes, well, I may have to play in St. Louis, would he become more open to going to a team like, say, Seattle? Just throwing something out there that might make baseball sense, but we haven't heard him link there.
So I've said this on Twitter and Blue Sky in a couple of places, and I'll be consistent. I think that horse is like way out of the barn, right? I don't think the relationship is bad between Nolan and the team. I really don't. I think this has been a collaborative process. I think that, we have learned that this conversation between Nolan and John Mozeliak happened in Colorado on the last road trip of the season, which is to say that Nolan has had pretty close to 3 months now to sort of internalize the idea that he's being traded and kind of get himself on the spot mentally to be prepared for that, right? This is relatively new to all of us, at least explicitly new to all of us, but Nolan's been sitting on it since like game 155. So this is not all that new to the principals involved here, right? I do think, however good the relationship is, and however cordial business-like it is, I just can't imagine that he shows up to spring training in Jupiter as a Card. I can't imagine what that would look like. In part because it cuts against everything they've said about how they want to give young players more playing time. They all but handed the spot to Nolan Gorman when we were talking about it at the winter meetings. And it's very clear that that's the guy who they want to have play at third base. But also because it's very difficult territory to tread here, right? Because I think it's very easy to sort of hang stuff on Nolan in terms of being a quote unquote bad clubhouse guy or whatever that looks like. And it's not that simple, and that's not really a fair reflection of what he is. But what Nolan does do, and in fact, you heard Joel Wolf talk about this, he turns it in on himself. And in fact, I think Joel even used the phrase, it can be hard on his teammates. And it can, because when it's not going well and the performance is not going well, he just grinds himself into the dirt over and over and over to try. Like, he's not a guy who's going to step out of the cage to fix it. He's just going to take 500 swings until it gets better. But he can't BP his way out of this situation at this point, right? I just think it has the risk of creating the kind of negative environment that the Cardinals really do not need or want lingering around. And the other thing I'll say too, that's a big part of this is I am of the belief that part of the reason that the Cardinals are executing this sort of step down plan, not only, to let Mo kind of go out on his own terms and, however the DeWitts think he may have earned that, it's also because they don't want this hanging around for Heim. Yeah. There's no part of the organization wants this to be on Heim's plate. They don't want to get to next November and have to do this again, and then Heim becomes the guy who now has to make this happen. And so by hook or by crook, I think they will figure out a way to find a deal that makes him happen. My honest prediction for all this, the way this sort of, when you look at how this happened when he was traded here ahead of the 21 season, that deal got finalized on February 1st. The reporting was, the 29th, 30th, and kind of rolled up to it. I think Nolan is going to go home for Christmas. I think he's going to spend a week in his house with his family talking about nothing but this. Where are you going to go next year? What's it going to look like? What does this look like? And he's going to come out of that ready to deal. I think he's going to wind himself up and do a frenzy about it and come out of it ready to make a deal happen, just on a human level, just of having this kind of around his neck. I really think that is more likely than anything else to be the outcome here. So I think we probably get to January 7th, 8th, that all of a sudden it really starts to kick over again.
Jeff, I'd love to come back to the idea of some of the long-term ramifications here in a second, but I do want to kind of circle back on, it's so public now, and to your point, the cat's kind of out of the bag that Arenado is probably gone. How much do you think that kind of hamstrings what the Cardinals can do in a deal at this point? Now it's been publicly confirmed that a deal's been blocked. They're willing to kick in 15 to 20 million. If it gets to January or so, the team's going to be asking for more money at this point. Like, they're going to see the fact that the Cardinals are like, you're kind of stuck with this guy right now, and you don't want him here. He doesn't want to be here. Like, how much does this make it difficult for the Cardinals to actually move him, especially because they do want to cut payroll in the process?
Yeah, I do think at this point they probably have a pretty good idea of what the offers look like. And I also think that generally, for better or worse, I think that teams are reluctant, if they've made an offer and they've had these conversations, to then go back and say, well, actually, you know what, now we thought about it and maybe we're going to kick in 10 million less. I think really, if they have these baselines of deals figured out, it's going to be pretty close to that. And honestly, the Cardinals are going to kick in, I think, are in the vicinity of $5 million a year. Sounds about right. That's the 15 that covers the extra year they tacked on to the end of the contract anyway. That sounds like an amount that would be just about what they like. I don't think the delta is so wide here that it's like, well, you can take Nolan and we'll pick up none of the money and we get no return, or we'll pay $50 million of his deal and you're going to give us a top 100 prospect. I don't think that it looks like that. I think it looks like here are the 12 teams, for argument's sake, who are willing to do it. Maybe no one's willing to go to 4 of them. And of those 4, what does the money look like? And I think you can just sort of whittle it down from there and get yourself into a spot if you're the Cardinals where maybe it's not the best deal. Maybe the 15 they were going to send Houston becomes 18. They send the Red Sox, for argument's sake, right? But I think that you end up in relatively the same spot.
I'm sure people want to circle back on the Helsley, Fetty, and Steven Matz side of things too, but I'm interested in your point about not wanting this to sit on Chaim Bloom's plate going into 2026. Clearly, payroll is about to take a significant drop. Clearly, performance on the field will likely take a drop. I mean, they would like to see the team be better next year or compete, but we'll have to see if that happens. But there's a scenario where these young bats don't pan out again, and then they look like they're in rebuild mode at the end of the season. How much are the DeWitts prepared to reinvest in the Major League roster following this reset year and most final year? Or is this potentially a sign of things that are going to come when it comes to spending at the Major League level, expectations for the club moving forward? Do you see this as a true one-year reset? Or is there a chance this kind of starts to percolate into 2026, 2027?
So I don't have a good answer to that question yet. I think bottom line, in terms of it percolating into 26 and 27, they would want that insofar as that would mean that the player development thing is working, right? And they're getting players to get turned out. But in terms of, essentially the question is, when does the payroll go back up? And I don't know the answer to that question. I think that one thing that stands out here, and that I think the Cardinals fans should start wrapping their minds around, is that when you look at like the second generation of team owner now that is sort of taking over throughout baseball, right? Talk about, it was John Angelos in Baltimore. You talk about Mark Lerner in DC. We're talking, Chris Ilitch, Hal Steinbrenner, all the sons of guys who owned these teams who are now taking over. Bill DeWitt is 84, right? Now, Bill DeWitt could live to be 135, and I hope he does, and he could own the team the whole time. But I do think that there would be an expectation that at some point there's going to be a transition there. And what does that look like one generation to the next? I don't have a confident answer to that question, right? Because I think that historically what we've seen from these second generation owners is that the spending goes down. It just does. Unless I'm missing one, I don't really know that there has been a team where when the team passed from one generation to the next, that spending went up. Maybe technically the Nationals based on when they gave Strasburg that deal, but not really, right? Like that has not really happened from one generation to the next. And so if this kind of reset in player development coincides roughly with whatever change may or may not be happening at an ownership level, however much larger Bill DeWitt III's role turns into be, the answer is, I don't know when the next time is the Cardinals will run a $200 million payroll. Is it 7 years from now after 4 of these guys pan out and they sign Wynn and Walker and Gorman and whoever else to enormous extensions? Maybe. That seems less likely to me than other outcomes, but I'm sure there was, and again, and the other thing too, that is part of this, I think I've written about this, when you look at where they're hiring from, it's Cleveland, it's Tampa, right? It's places that run on low budgets, that win games by churning guys and by, the Guardians last year, what were they, 110, maybe, whatever their payroll was last year, right? This is what these teams operate on. And these are the teams from which executives who are going to run this team moving forward are being plucked. And I think that's noteworthy, and it's worth keeping an eye on.
How much do you think that has to do with attendance cratering this year? The Cardinals, more than a lot of teams, rely on gate money. Obviously, the TV deal is important, but we've seen that kind of be a real problem for them. We don't know enough about that moving forward. But attendance went down, and so revenue went down. How much is based on that? Merchandising sales maybe being down, and if those things rebound, can we expect payroll to at least rebound near what it was, or is that not connected?
I don't know whether it's connected.
Yeah,
because we have not really lived through a period where they have scaled, certainly not this dramatically, where they have scaled down in a single year. And so is this a reaction to what they anticipate the next, whatever year or 3 to look like at the ballpark? Maybe. Or is this just sort of the way that they do business now? I don't really have a confident answer to that question. I know that's not super reassuring, but they expect attendance to go down, and I think that it will. I think attendance last year was, off the top of my head, 2.8-ish, right? So if they lost, I don't know, if they lost 20% off of that, if they dropped down to like 2.3, that would feel calamitous, probably.
Big, yeah.
That would be, that's again, maybe I'm way off the top of my head. That feels like Milwaukee. That feels like 19,000 on a weeknight and 26 on a good weekend. Yeah. And that is going to feel like an empty Busch Stadium. Like I can tell you, the first night they announced a crowd of less than 30, we were all shocked upstairs because we thought for sure they would never announce less than 30, that they had enough season tickets and they had enough giveaways and they had enough ballpark passes that they would never have to. So there is a lot of uncharted territory and a lot of stuff that I don't know that any of us really could give you confident answers to. I can tell you what the team is saying about those things now. I don't know how durable the truths that they're telling right now are going to be, and we'll see what that looks like 2, 5, 10 years down the road.
Jeff, I have an overview question for you. And again, I can't ask you to peer into the crystal ball and know for sure, but I just want to get your gut feeling, your instinct. Obviously, there's been some damage done in terms of Cardinals fans, the relationship with ownership management. It has not been a happy time. They're paying a price for it in ticket sales, general revenue. And we all, in our love our jobs, hear a lot from really irate fans, which is cool. Everybody's entitled to be irate if they want.
Yeah.
I always have a problem filtering it, wondering if like this represents the overwhelming feeling out there, or just the people that feel the need to be really, really outspoken about it. But here's the question, and I'm sorry for the long buildup. What do you think it's going to take to repair that damage and to where fans feel good to come back to Busch Stadium, who have been staying away, and they feel good about, in effect, investing in the club again with their hard-earned income? What do you think? What's the magic formula to get everyone back and happy?
Part of it, I think, is going to be on some of these guys, right? If Mason wins rookie year is a stepping stone and Mason becomes the next and the next thing from that, that's going to help. If JJ Weatherholt is what they hope that he is and becomes that guy, that's going to help. If they figure out a pitcher, that's going to help. All that stuff is going to go a long way. But the other part of it too is how credible does a new administration appear to be, right? Because I think that, when we talk about the Chaim Bloom experience in Boston, I think part of what for him was a challenge there was that he came in and immediately had no credibility, because the first thing that happened was that he got instructed by ownership to trade Mookie Betts, and everyone knew it. And that cut Chaim's legs out from the beginning and put him in really kind of an untenable spot there, to the extent that his 3 years in Boston are almost like a mulligan, right? Like, I don't know how you judge him based on any of that, based on what ownership looked like and that whole process. Which is all to say, like, I mean, winning brings trust back, right? Like, if they stumble into 92 wins next year, they're okay, great, that's going to be fun. But I think we all saw, in 2022, Albert's big farewell, they're in the postseason. They didn't sell out a home playoff game. Like, they had a home playoff game that did not have that was not sold out. There's a deeper problem there that I don't know what that addressing has to look like. And I do think changeover in the front office will help. And I actually, and I'm going to ask you guys this question, because I don't know what the number is, but how many games do they have to win in 2025 to have an on-the-field ceremony for Mozeliak the last home game of the season? How much?
Oh, my goodness.
Because he's earned it, right? But if they
absolutely, yeah.
If they win 74 games, he's getting booed off the field on retirement.
Oh, no.
But if they win like 4 games, I don't know. I don't know what they.
Well, I think if the Cardinals have a winning record, it's so hard to even say that, though, because I think it's more almost about how the rest of the division and the rest of the National League performs. Because if you look at this past year, right, the Cardinals win 83 games or 84, 80, whatever the case.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, we said that's going to be enough. We said that's going to be enough. 84 to 86 wins is going to put them in contention for a wild card. And then the National League wild card race overperforms by a factor of 6 to 8 games, and 90 wasn't enough. And so I think if the National League is strong again, especially in the middle last year, where the Cardinals are contending for a playoff spot for the first 4.5 months of the season. But because the National League was so strong, and because people around the team just didn't view the Cardinals positively, the energy around the team from fans was so negative. I had people asking me whether the Cardinals sucked or not when they were 4 games above 500 and holding the top wildcard spot early July. Like, that's crazy to me. So next year, if the Cardinals win 82 games and that's enough for them to sneak into the playoffs or at least compete into September, then I think people are going to be happy with the Mozeliak tenure ending that way. But if it's not enough, there's no way.
I honestly don't think there's anything that's going to appease people anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, you even go back to the Yachty or the Waino end of the celebration. I know that was the end of the 2023 season, so things are going terribly. But Mosaic got booed off the patio for right there. Remember, that Newt joke that he made?
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. Bernie's a great point. Like how much of it's a vocal minority online versus like the general perception.
Yeah.
I just would be shocked if there's any scenario within the year right now where you walk into Busch Stadium, they do something for John Mozeliak, and he gets a standing applause for it. I mean, I think there's the cordial of the kind fans, but like I just think it's gonna be a mixed reaction at best right now. Bernie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of, I hate to be a downer, but I think it's almost like a hopeless situation.
Yeah.
And perhaps this is all about me and my interactions with people. And I'm struck by something that no matter what happens, even if Mozeliak does something really good, people just simply refuse to give him credit for anything. Everything is trash. I got into a debate about how people say, well, he never did anything to improve the team.
That's not true.
When he had Goldie and Arenado. And I said, whoa. What about the trade deadline in 2022? Jordan Montgomery and Jose Quintana were great acquisitions. They won 17 of the 23 games that they started. They were legit. They were good. It was a top 10 offense. No. He didn't do it. He didn't do enough. I thought he did plenty, actually. And some years he didn't.
Yeah.
But even when he does something that is, to me, just an absolute home run, no, people just no. They cover their ears and they have a tantrum, and that's it. There's a lot of that out there, and that makes me wonder whether Mo can do anything to win them over, at least for them to politely collapse.
And I don't know when that flipped. I don't know when it was that became the situation. Is it that they didn't try to sign Bryce Harper in the offseason before 19? I mean, that's ownership.
That's ownership. Yeah.
Right. Like I don't know when it was. Well, I guess what I would say is the downside to making yourself the face and the voice of every decision is that you're the face and the voice of every decision.
Yeah.
So when they went into the pandemic and he decided that he was the unitary executive and all baseball messaging flowed through him, that's fine. But that took a big chunk when things went badly. And I think he got whacked when things happened with Mike Schilt, and there was not a good explanation. That was botched. Yeah. That whatever you believe of whether they should or shouldn't have let Mike Schilt go, they botched the outright. They screwed it up. It was maybe the worst stretch of like PR messaging I've ever seen.
It's bad.
It was really bad.
Yeah. I rubber stamp what you said there. I totally agree. Yeah. And I know we have to take a break, right? So, Andrew?
In just a moment, yeah.
Hey, Jeff, as me being the grandpa here at the table, let me say this. The interesting thing about Mo, and I'll be quick with this, but because historical perspective is helpful. When Mo first took over as the head of the baseball department after he fired Jock, and he tried to hire Chris Antonetti, then he turned to Mo, and Mo actually did a really good job healing the divide in the organization. One of the things they did with that is they actually hired a public relations specialist to coach him up about messaging. And this guy, who I know is really, really good, and I think he saved Mo a lot of trouble by pointing out, well, you don't step in that pothole, and this is how you should explain this, and this is what you have to you have to drive home, and you have to be repetitive with it, and you have to do this, don't do that. And Mo was really good at it for a while, and then I guess maybe to save money or whatever, they did away with the PR specialist. And Mo's messaging since then, part of it is just fatigue because he's been in place so long, but his messaging, man, just got worse and worse and worse by the year. I don't know how Chaim Bloom will be. I heard he's a cordial guy. He's really good in one-on-one situations. He doesn't play the big room necessarily well. So I'll be curious if that will improve and whether the Cardinals above him will do something to help deliver better messages to the public. So at least fans will understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, my one really small anecdote on that front, Bernie, to that point is you've been to plenty of winter meetings. You know what the lobby looks like and the bar looks like at the hotel and all this mess. And you know that Mo wasn't there. Mo was in the room. That was not a Mo scene, and that's fine. Doesn't have to be. But I'll tell you who I did see a lot in the lobby of the hotel last week was Chaim Bloom. I saw Chaim a lot around, talking to people, shaking hands, glad handing. Now, they were also hiring a ton of coordinators and everything else, so maybe he's down there, whatever, interviewing guys. But I saw Chaim more in a week than I saw Mo combined at like the 5 winter meetings that I've been to, just in terms of being around, right? Part of that is Chaim is, 20 years younger than Mo? Something like, it's pretty close. But part of it is they're different guys and it's different personality. And Chaim is energized and excited for new opportunity. And Mo, I think if you gave him the truth serum, has been pretty exhausted for like 4 years now. And will probably be happy to do whatever his next thing is. So, it doesn't mean everything, but it doesn't mean nothing. And they are at least making an attempt to look, if there's going to be 32-year-olds in Lulu slacks flooding the lobby, then Chaim's going to be there collecting resumes.
What are you talking about? Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah.
This is the new world we live in. I am now 5 years older than everybody in every front office, and they've all paid $114 for athletic pants they have to wear.
Jeff, this just makes me think we had you on the podcast one time, and you talked about how Mo looks like a Bond villain.
That was funny.
We're
that
going
was
from
good.
Bond villain to Lululemon pants.
Look, I'm wearing a hoodie, and I literally, the hat that I have on was the first hit on Amazon for soft build hat or whatever. I don't know a man alive who needs to wear a sweater over their shoulders in Florida. It's just, you don't need to.
It's true.
It's 84 degrees, Mo. That's enough.
Jeff, we really appreciate your time tonight. On the way out, any quick predictions about what'll end up happening with Steven Matz or like an Eric Fetty? Some of these other names have been kind of sprinkled out as opportunities for them to move some payroll. Do you think it's mainly just Nato at this point, or do you think Matz or Fetty would be moved as well?
Yeah, so no. So if you want to hear an irresponsible prediction, I will irresponsibly predict that they will trade one of those guys and re-sign Kyle Gibson. I think that is what they wanted. I think that is what they want to do.
Okay.
I think
maybe they should have held on to him.
Well, but not for as much, right? My official prediction on December 19th is that they will figure out a way to trade at least one of Matz and Fetty. They would prefer to trade Matz. They might have to trade Fetty, and that they will re-sign Kyle Gibson for $1 million less than he would have made on the option. But he gets made whole because he got his payout.
Yeah,
there you go.
All right.
That's my official off the
wall
prediction.
I'm a Gibson guy. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and last year Kyle was great. Couldn't have been better. It was really important for that clubhouse. And if they've really done a 180 and they think Michael McGreevy is a big league starter now, I can't imagine a guy who they would more want stapled to him for a full season than Kyle Gibson.
Good point.
Before I shuffle out of here, I do two things. I want to do a little plugs. Number one, the Baseball Writers Dinner is on January 19th at the MAC. Tickets are on sale. We are running a special now where if you buy tickets to this year's dinner, after dinner is over, you will get an email with a code for $25 off your ticket for next year's dinner. We are eager to have folks come out. The 85 World Series team is going to be heavily featured. So our VIP event this year is Ricky Horton hosting a Q&A with Todd Worrell and Vince Coleman. So that'll be a lot of fun. Mesa Wynn's going to be there. Brendan Donovan is going to be there. Tony Vitello is going to be there to accept an award. So a lot of people in orange are going to be showing up. Frank the Burrito is going to be there. Bernie, I'm sure you've known Frank for a very long time.
Sure.
He'll be there, accepting an award this year as well. So going to be a really fun program. That program is always a lot of fun. If you're a Cardinals fan, sincerely, if you are a Cardinals fan, you owe it to yourself to go to the dinner at least. If it's not this year, I get it. But you should go in a future year. If you want to wait for a winner, you should go this year. But if you want to go, you do owe it to yourself to go at least once. The second thing I'm going to plug real quick is a story that you can't read right now, but you will be able to read tomorrow morning. And I'm going to go ahead and spoiler preview this for you here now.
All right.
I reached out a couple of months ago to Palm Beach County after the Cardinals said that they were doing all this spending in Florida. They're doing all these expenditures. I reached out to Palm Beach County and said, "Hey, do you by chance have public records about how much money you're spending on this facility?" Turns out that they do. And a couple of months later, I got back a financing agreement from Palm Beach County outlining their cost outlay, Florida's cost outlay, and the cost outlay for the joint conglomeration of the Cardinals and the Marlins. And so tomorrow morning there will be a story in the News Democrat that covers that. The other thing that's important, a little detail about that story, is that the documents in Florida, when you're signing a contract, apparently you have to get a sign off from everybody who has at least 5% ownership interest in the company. The Cardinals ownership has never really, as far as I can tell, been publicly broken down. I can tell you there are at the 2022, there were 6 people who had at least in the Cardinals. And those are named and enumerated in tomorrow morning's story. So you should go ahead.
See, that's why I subscribe to have a digital subscription to the Belleville-News Democrat.
See, and we appreciate it.
That's some good stuff.
It comes to your house from Indianapolis. We're really glad that you have the digital.
Well, Jeff, we look forward to reading that tomorrow. Thanks for the quick preview of that. Obviously, thank you for your time tonight. We always appreciate it. We'll talk soon, Jeff, but have a great holidays, and we'll probably see you 2025 then.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime. Very good to see y'all.
Thanks for stopping in.